She thought it was just another late-night shift at the diner until a lonely millionaire walked in, leaving behind a letter that carried the final wish of his life. No one could have guessed how a poor waitress would be the one to make it come true. Stay with me until the end, because this story will shatter your heart and then put it back together again. But before we start, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The clock on the wall showed 2:47 in the morning when Maria wiped down the same table for the third time. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the empty diner. At 23 years old, she had been working the graveyard shift at Rosie's Diner for almost 2 years now. The pay was terrible, but it was the only job that fit around her morning classes at community college. Her black sneakers squeaked against the checkered linoleum floor as she moved between tables. The coffee pot gurgled in the background, and the neon sign outside flickered intermittently, painting the windows red, then dark, red, then dark. Most nights were quiet like this. A few truckers would stop by around midnight, maybe a late-night worker grabbing coffee before heading home, but tonight felt different somehow. Maria had grown up in this small town outside Denver. Her mother cleaned houses during the day. Her father worked construction when he could find it. They lived in a cramped apartment above the hardware store, where the rent was cheap but the walls were thin. Every dollar Maria earned went toward groceries, rent, or her textbooks. She dreamed of becoming a teacher someday, but that felt like a lifetime away. She was refilling the sugar dispensers when she heard the bell above the door chime. A man walked in slowly, his expensive coat dripping from the rain outside. He was older, maybe in his 70s, with silver hair neatly combed back and deep lines around his eyes. What struck her wasn't his obvious wealth, but the way he carried himself, like someone who was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Good evening," she said, grabbing a menu. "Sit anywhere you like." He chose the corner booth, the one with the torn vinyl seat that nobody ever fixed. Maria walked over with her notepad ready, but when she got closer, she noticed something that made her pause. His hands were shaking slightly as he removed his coat, and his eyes looked distant, almost empty. "What can I get you tonight?" she asked gently. "Just coffee," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Black." Maria nodded and went to pour his cup. When she returned, he was staring out the rain-streaked window. She set the coffee down carefully and was about to walk away when he spoke again. "What's your name?" "Maria," she answered, surprised by the question. "That's a beautiful name." He looked up at her then, and she saw something in his eyes that she couldn't quite place. Sadness, maybe, or regret. "Thank you. Are you sure you don't want anything to eat?" "We have pie." He smiled faintly. "No, thank you. The coffee is perfect." Maria returned to her cleaning, but she kept glancing over at the man. He sat there for over an hour, nursing the same cup of coffee, occasionally writing in a small leather notebook. She refilled his cup twice without him asking. Each time he thanked her with genuine warmth, as if she had done something extraordinary instead of just pouring coffee. Around 4 a.m., the man stood up and put on his coat. He walked to the counter where Maria was counting the till. "What do I owe you?" he asked. $3.50, she replied. He pulled out his wallet and placed a $20 bill on the counter. "Keep the change." Maria's eyes widened. "Sir, that's way too much. The coffee was only $3.50. You've been very kind to me tonight," he said. "Kindness is worth more than money." He turned to leave, then stopped and reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out an envelope and placed it next to the $20 bill. "Would you do me a favor?" he asked. "Of course. Don't open this until tomorrow evening, and when you do, please consider what's inside carefully." Before Maria could ask what he meant, the man was gone. The bell chimed once more, and she watched through the window as he walked slowly to a black sedan parked under the streetlight. The car drove away, leaving Maria alone with the envelope. She picked it up and turned it over in her hands. It was thick, cream-colored paper, expensive looking. Her name was written on the front in elegant handwriting: Maria Gonzalez. She set it aside and finished her shift, but she couldn't stop thinking about the strange encounter. The next day, Maria attended her psychology class and her English literature course. She tried to focus on the lectures, but her mind kept drifting to the envelope sitting on her kitchen table. During her afternoon break, she called her best friend Carmen. "This rich guy came into the diner last night," she explained. "Left me this envelope and told me not to open it until today." "What do you think is in it?" Carmen asked. "I have no idea. Maybe it's just a thank you note or something. Or maybe it's money. Rich people do weird things sometimes." Maria doubted that. The man had seemed sad, not generous in the way wealthy people sometimes were when they wanted to show off. There had been something final about the way he spoke, like he was saying goodbye. That evening, Maria sat at her small kitchen table with the envelope in front of her. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter on matching stationery and something else that made her gasp. It was a check for $50,000. With shaking hands, she unfolded the letter and began to read. "Dear Maria, my name is Robert Caldwell. Last night, you showed me more kindness in 2 hours than I have experienced in years. You didn't know who I was. You didn't want anything from me. And yet you treated me with genuine care and respect. I am dying. The doctors have given me 3 weeks, maybe a month. I have no family left, no children, no one who will miss me when I'm gone. I built a fortune over 40 years, but I forgot to build a life. This check is not charity. It is an investment in goodness. I have been watching you, Maria. Not in a strange way, but in the way someone watches a sunrise. You work 2 jobs, you go to school, you take care of your parents. You do all of this without complaint, without bitterness. I have one last wish, and I believe you are the only person who can fulfill it. I want to know what it feels like to make a real difference in someone's life. Not through a tax-deductible donation to a charity I'll never visit, but through direct, personal kindness. Use this money for your education, for your family, for your dreams. But there is one condition. I want you to promise me that someday, when you are successful and happy, you will do the same for someone else. Find someone who needs kindness, someone who has been forgotten, and change their life the way you are about to change mine. I will be watching, Maria, not from some heavenly place, but through the ripples of goodness that will spread from this moment forward. Your friend, Robert Caldwell. P.S. There is more. Much more. But first, I need to know if you will accept this responsibility. Maria read the letter 3 times before it fully sank in. $50,000. Enough to pay for the rest of college, to help her parents, to finally breathe without worrying about rent money. But it was more than money. It was a stranger's faith in her character, his belief that she would do the right thing. She looked at the check again, then at the letter. At the bottom, in small print, was a phone number and an address. Robert Caldwell lived in the wealthiest part of Denver, in a neighborhood Maria had only driven through once. She picked up her phone and dialed the number. It rang twice before a weak voice answered. "Hello, Mr. Caldwell? This is Maria, from the diner." There was a pause, then a sound that might have been laughter or crying. "I was hoping you would call." Maria's heart pounded as she held the phone. "I got your letter and the check. Mr. Caldwell, I don't understand why you chose me." His voice was gentle but tired. "Because last night, when I walked into that diner, I was planning to drive to the mountains afterward. I wasn't planning to come back, but you looked at me like I mattered, like I was a person, not just another customer." Maria felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean you weren't planning to come back?" There was a long pause. "I've been alone for so long, Maria. My wife died 5 years ago. Cancer. We never had children. I threw myself into work after she passed, but work doesn't hold you when you're scared. Work doesn't care if you live or die." "Mr. Caldwell, please don't talk like that. But that's just it. You changed something in me last night. When you refilled my coffee without me asking. When you asked if I was okay. When you treated me like I was your grandfather instead of a stranger. I remembered what it felt like to be human again." Maria wiped tears from her eyes. She could hear the loneliness in his voice, the years of isolation wrapped around every word. "The money is real, Maria. The check will clear. But I need you to understand what I'm really asking of you. I don't want to die knowing that my life meant nothing. I want to die knowing that I helped someone build something beautiful. What exactly do you want me to do?" "Live," he said simply. "Use the money to become the teacher you want to be. Help your parents. But more than that, I want you to promise me something. I want you to find 3 people in your life who need help, and I want you to help them. Not with my money, but with the kindness you showed me." Maria looked around her tiny apartment. The peeling paint on the walls, the secondhand furniture, the stack of unpaid bills on the counter. This money could change everything. "There's something else," Robert continued. "I've been watching you for weeks, Maria. Not in a creepy way. I eat at the diner across the street sometimes. I've seen how you help the homeless man who sits outside. I've watched you share your lunch with him when you thought no one was looking. You've been watching me? I've been looking for someone like you. Someone who does good things when nobody's watching. Someone who gives even when they have nothing left to give." Maria felt overwhelmed. This was too much. Too big. Too important. "I need to meet you in person," she said finally. "If you're really serious about this, I need to look you in the eyes and understand what you're asking of me." Robert was quiet for a moment. "All right, can you come tomorrow? I'll send you my address." "You already gave me your address." "It's at the bottom of the letter. Smart girl. Come at 2 in the afternoon. We have a lot to discuss." The next day, Maria took the bus to the wealthy part of Denver. She had borrowed a dress from Carmen, something more appropriate than her usual jeans and t-shirt. The houses in Robert's neighborhood were massive, with manicured lawns and gates that probably cost more than her parents' annual income. Robert's house was different, though. It was large but felt empty somehow. The lawn was overgrown, the windows were dark, and paint was peeling from the front door. It looked like a house where no one lived, just existed. Maria rang the doorbell and waited. When Robert opened the door, she barely recognized him. He looked smaller than he had in the diner, more fragile. His expensive clothes hung loose on his frame, and his skin had a grayish tint. "Maria," he said, and his face lit up with genuine joy. "Thank you for coming." He led her into a living room filled with expensive furniture covered in dust sheets. Family photos sat on the mantel, but they were turned face down. "I know this is strange," he said, settling into a leather chair. An old man giving money to a young woman he barely knows. "But I've thought about this for months. I've watched dozens of people, looking for someone who had what you have. What do I have? Hope. Genuine kindness. The ability to see people instead of just looking at them." Robert pulled out a folder from the table beside his chair. Inside this folder is the deed to a small building downtown. It's been empty for 2 years. The previous owner used it as a community center before he died. Maria opened the folder and stared at the papers inside. "A deed with her name on it. I don't understand. This is my real last wish, Maria. I want you to reopen that community center. Use it to help people the way you helped me. Serve meals to people who are hungry. Provide a safe place for kids after school. Teach adults to read. Whatever you think the community needs most. Mr. Caldwell, I'm just a waitress. I don't know how to run a community center. Neither did the man who ran it before. But he cared about people, and that's what mattered. The $50,000 is just the beginning. There's a trust fund set up that will provide operating expenses for 5 years. Maria felt dizzy. This was impossible. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because 3 weeks ago, I was sitting in my doctor's office getting my death sentence. 3 months to live, maybe 6 if I was lucky. I drove around for hours afterward, trying to figure out what my life had meant. I couldn't think of a single person who would miss me. Not one." Robert's eyes filled with tears. "I was planning to end it myself rather than waste away in some hospital room. But then I remembered something my wife used to say. She said the meaning of life isn't found in what we accomplish, but in how we make other people feel." Maria reached across and took his hand. It was cold and thin, but his grip was firm. "That night in the diner, you made me feel like I mattered. You gave me a reason to want to see tomorrow. And now I want to give you a reason to change the world." "I'm scared," Maria admitted. "What if I mess this up? What if I'm not good enough?" Robert smiled. "Fear means you care, and caring is the most important qualification for this job." They spent the next 3 hours going over the details. The building needed repairs, but it was structurally sound. There were contacts for contractors, suppliers, and volunteers. Robert had thought of everything. As Maria prepared to leave, Robert walked her to the door. "There's one more thing," he said. "I won't be around to see what you build. The doctors were optimistic when they said 3 months. I have maybe 3 weeks left." Maria felt her heart break all over again. "Then we better make these 3 weeks count." Robert's face broke into the biggest smile she'd seen from him. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say." That evening, Maria called her parents and Carmen to share the news. Her mother cried. Her father kept asking if this was some kind of scam. Carmen screamed so loud that Maria had to hold the phone away from her ear. But as Maria lay in bed that night, she wasn't thinking about the money or the building or even the impossible responsibility she'd accepted. She was thinking about Robert, alone in that big empty house, counting down his final days. She made a decision. She would spend those 3 weeks with him, not just planning the community center, but making sure he didn't die alone. The next morning, Maria called in sick to work and took the bus back to Robert's house. When he answered the door, she was carrying a bag of groceries and wearing her biggest smile. "I hope you like pancakes," she said, "because we're going to spend your last few weeks living, not just waiting to die." Robert stared at her for a long moment, then began to cry. But for the first time in years, they were tears of joy. Over the next 2 weeks, Maria and Robert fell into an unexpected rhythm. Every morning, she would arrive at his house with fresh groceries and a plan for the day. They would cook breakfast together, Robert teaching her recipes his late wife had perfected. Then they would work on plans for the community center, going through blueprints and discussing which programs would help the most people. But the most precious moments were the quiet ones. Robert would tell her stories about his childhood, growing up poor in a small farming town. He talked about meeting his wife Sarah at a church dance, how she wore a yellow dress and laughed at all his terrible jokes. Maria shared her own dreams, her fears about college, her hopes of becoming a teacher who could make a real difference in children's lives. On the 10th day, Robert was too weak to leave his bed. Maria sat beside him, reading aloud from his favorite book of poetry. His breathing was shallow, but his eyes were bright with contentment. "I need to tell you something, Maria," he whispered, "the trust fund for the community center. It's not just for 5 years." "What do you mean?" I lied. "There's enough money to run that place for 50 years, maybe more. But I wanted to see if you would commit to something without knowing how big it really was." Maria's hands trembled as she processed his words. "Mr. Caldwell, that's millions of dollars. 47 million to be exact. My life's work, everything I built, it's all going to you. But not just the money, Maria, the responsibility." He reached for a manila envelope on his nightstand. Inside this envelope are the names and addresses of 12 other people. People like you, waitresses, janitors, teachers, nurses, people who work hard and care about others but never get noticed. Maria opened the envelope with shaking hands. The names were handwritten on expensive paper, along with detailed notes about each person's life, their struggles, their character. "I've been watching all of them, just like I watched you. When I'm gone, I want you to find them. Give each of them the same choice I gave you, $50,000 and a chance to change someone's life." "This is too much," Maria whispered. "I'm just one person. I can't handle all of this. You won't be alone. Each person you help will help others. It will grow, Maria, like ripples in a pond. By the time you're my age, thousands of people will have been touched by what we start here." That night, Robert passed away peacefully in his sleep. Maria was holding his hand when the monitors stopped beeping. She sat with him for an hour, crying for the grandfather she'd never had, the friend she'd known for only 3 weeks, the man who had changed her entire world. The funeral was small, just Maria, a few business associates, and Robert's longtime housekeeper, Mrs. Chen. After the service, the lawyer handed Maria a key to Robert's house and a letter with her name on it. She drove to the empty house and sat in Robert's favorite chair. The letter was brief but powerful. "Dear Maria, if you're reading this, then our time together has ended, but our work is just beginning. Don't mourn for me too long. I died happier than I ever thought possible, knowing that my life finally had meaning. The house is yours now. Live in it, sell it, do whatever feels right. But remember what we talked about. Find those 12 people. Give them the choice. Watch the world change. I have one final request. When you're old and your time comes, I want you to find someone young and kind and lost, just like you were. Give them everything. Let them carry the torch forward. This isn't about money, Maria. It's about proving that goodness exists, that people will choose to help each other if given the chance. You are my proof. With all my love and faith, Robert. Maria folded the letter and looked around the empty house. Sunlight streamed through the windows, highlighting dust motes dancing in the air. For the first time since Robert's death, she smiled. 3 months later, Maria stood in front of the renovated community center. The sign above the door read, "Caldwell Community Center, where kindness begins." The grand opening was tomorrow, and she was terrified and excited in equal measure. She had quit her job at the diner and withdrawn from college, at least temporarily. The community center would be her classroom now, teaching her things no textbook ever could. She had hired Mrs. Chen to help run the day-to-day operations, and together they had created programs for job training, childcare, senior meals, and after-school tutoring. But tonight, Maria had a different mission. She drove across town to a 24-hour laundromat where she had been watching a young, single mother named Jessica. Jessica worked 2 jobs and brought her 5-year-old daughter to the laundromat every Tuesday night because it was the only quiet place they could afford to do homework together. Maria parked across the street and watched through the window. Jessica was helping her daughter sound out words from a picture book while their clothes tumbled in the dryer. The little girl's face lit up every time she got a word right. This was the first name on Robert's list. Maria took a deep breath, picked up the envelope she had prepared, and walked across the street. When she pushed open the laundromat door, Jessica looked up with tired but kind eyes. "Excuse me," Maria said softly. "I know this might sound strange, but I have something for you." Jessica's hand instinctively moved to protect her daughter. "I'm sorry, but we're not interested in whatever you're selling. I'm not selling anything. My name is Maria Gonzalez. I run the community center that just opened downtown. Someone very special asked me to find you." Jessica's expression shifted from suspicion to confusion. "Find me? Why?" Maria sat down across from them, noting how the little girl had her mother's gentle eyes. "Because someone believes you're exactly the kind of person who makes the world better. Someone who noticed that you bring your daughter here every week, not because you have to, but because you want to give her the best you can with what you have." "How do you know that?" Jessica's voice was barely above a whisper. Maria handed her the envelope. "There's a letter inside that will explain everything better than I can. But I want you to know something first. The man who wrote that letter changed my life completely. He saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. And now it's my turn to pass that gift forward." Jessica opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a letter explaining Robert's vision. As she read, tears began streaming down her face. "This is impossible," she whispered. "People don't just give away money like this." "They do now," Maria said gently. "That's what makes this so beautiful. We're proving that kindness is contagious, that goodness spreads when we give it room to grow." Jessica's daughter tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, why are you crying?" "These are happy tears, baby. Very happy tears." Maria spent the next hour explaining everything. The community center, Robert's vision, the 11 other people whose lives were about to change. Jessica listened with growing amazement, occasionally wiping away tears. "What do I have to do?" Jessica finally asked. "Use the money to build a better life for you and your daughter. Go back to school if you want. Start a business. Buy a house. But someday, when you're stable and successful, find someone else who needs help. Pass it forward. Just like that. Just like that." Maria smiled. though I hope you'll let us help along the way. The community center has childcare and job training programs. We're here to support each other." As Maria drove home that night, she thought about Robert. She could almost hear his voice, proud and happy, telling her she had done well. Tomorrow, she would open the community center. Next week, she would find the second person on the list. One by one, she would change 12 lives, and those 12 would change others. The ripples were already spreading. 6 months later, Maria stood on the stage of the community center's main hall. The room was packed with people whose lives had been touched by Robert's vision. Jessica was there with her daughter, now enrolled in a good school and pursuing her nursing degree. There was David, the former homeless veteran who now ran the center's job training program. Sarah, the elderly widow who had started a grief support group. Marcus, the teenager who had been aging out of foster care and now helped with the after-school program. But tonight wasn't about celebrating what they had accomplished. Tonight was about announcing the next phase. Maria looked out at the crowd and smiled. 6 months ago, a lonely old man walked into a diner and changed my life forever. He taught me that the meaning of life isn't found in what we accomplish, but in how we make other people feel. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Tonight, I'm announcing the Caldwell Foundation. We're expanding beyond our town. We're going to find communities across the country that need hope, that need someone to believe in them. We're going to prove that kindness is the most powerful force in the world. The applause was thunderous. Maria waited for it to die down before continuing. But here's the most important part. This isn't about me or even about Robert Caldwell. This is about all of you. Every person in this room has been changed by kindness, and now it's your turn to change others. She gestured to a table at the back of the room where volunteers were seated with stacks of envelopes. Each of you will receive a list of 3 people in your community who need help. Not money, necessarily. Maybe they need friendship. Maybe they need someone to believe in them. Maybe they just need someone to see them as human beings. Maria's voice grew stronger. We're not just starting a foundation tonight. We're starting a revolution. A revolution of kindness. A revolution that proves good people will choose to help each other when given the chance. As people lined up to receive their assignments, Maria thought about Robert one more time. He had wanted to know what it felt like to make a real difference in someone's life. She hoped somehow, somewhere, he could feel the waves of goodness spreading out from that small diner where it all began. The revolution had started with a cup of coffee and a lonely man's last wish. Now it would spread across the world, one act of kindness at a time. And Maria knew with absolute certainty that this was only the beginning. 5 years had passed since that night at the diner when everything changed. Maria stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her new home, the one Robert had left her, getting ready for the most important day of her life. Today wasn't just another day at the community center. Today was the day she would fulfill the deepest part of Robert's last wish. She had received a call 3 days earlier from a hospital in Chicago. A young woman named Elena was dying of cancer. She was only 24 years old, the same age Maria had been when she met Robert. Elena had no family, no visitors, and according to the nurse who called, she had been asking for someone, anyone, to sit with her during her final days. The nurse had found Maria's number through the Caldwell Foundation website. Elena had been reading about their work online from her hospital bed, tears streaming down her face as she learned about Robert's story and how one act of kindness had grown into something beautiful. Maria packed a small bag and drove to Chicago that same day. When she walked into Elena's room, she saw herself 5 years ago, a young woman who felt alone, scared, and forgotten by the world. Elena's dark hair had fallen out from chemotherapy, but her eyes still held that spark Maria recognized, the same spark Robert had seen in her. "Elena," Maria said softly, sitting in the chair beside her bed. "I'm Maria. I heard you wanted to meet me." Elena smiled weakly and reached for Maria's hand. "I wanted to thank you," she whispered. "Your story gave me hope that my life could mean something too, even if it's ending." Maria squeezed her hand gently. "What if I told you it doesn't have to end with you?" Over the next 3 days, Maria shared Robert's vision with Elena, watching as the young woman's eyes filled with purpose instead of despair. On Elena's final night, she handed Maria a letter she had written to her nurse, Sarah, along with instructions to give her the small inheritance she had saved. "Pass it forward," Elena whispered with her last breath. "Let kindness live forever." And that's how Robert's last wish truly came full circle. From a lonely millionaire to a poor waitress to a dying young woman, proving that kindness isn't about how much money you have or how much time you have left. It's about choosing to see the good in others and giving them a reason to believe in themselves.